Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look at life through a biblical lens. Tonight we're looking at the Donald. Donald Trump was at Liberty University this past week. Can you say Mystery Babylon? On a recent edition of Glenn Beck's show, psychologist Ben Michalis told Beck that Donald Trump is doing the same thing as Mussolini, that he's doing the same thing as Hitler. And the reason he believes they garnered support back in the 30s and the 40s, and the reason Trump has this groundswell of support is the same. It's because their campaigns appealed to the economically downtrodden. But that's not the only criticism the psychologist had for this billionaire Republican. Though he said he has not clinically diagnosed him, Michalis voiced his belief that there is evidence to show that Trump suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. Adding the words disorder to the phrase makes it a medical problem. The psychological community did that a number of decades ago, and it was purposeful. I can be narcissistic. I can have a narcissistic personality. But when you put the word disorder on it, it's a medical problem. So he's not just simply acting this way, he's broken. And he's broken in such a way that only a psychiatrist or a psychologist can fix him. Oh, I made a mistake. Mental disorders cannot be fixed. Have you ever been diagnosed with a mental disorder? There's about 500 of them now. Or maybe you have a child who's taking drugs because they have a disorder. Disorders, mental disorders, can never be fixed. They can only be maintained, controlled. But I digress. Michalis said, quote, all of the evidence, again, simply by observing Donald, is of someone who has an inflated, possibly delusional sense of self-esteem. Very little remorse, very little empathy for other people. And he continued by saying a streak that is very common to narcissists when they are questioned or attacked in any way is that they attack with complete single-minded vitriol. And that's what Mr. Trump is exhibiting as he goes after his critics. You say something critical about him and he dumps the truck on you. The psychologist told Beck that the evidence leads to only one of two possible conclusions. Either he believes that what he's saying and is truly a narcissist, or he doesn't believe a lot of the things that he's saying, which puts him in a very different category, that of someone who may be kind of in the psychotic spectrum. Michalis is not alone in his belief that Trump is a narcissist. In fact, though some in the mental health community have criticized therapists for diagnosing public figures, many have echoed claims very similar to Dr. Michalis. Later in the program, Michalis doubled down, adding that he doesn't believe Trump exhibits any moral compass either. Quote, I don't think this man really has any true moral compass. He believes he is his own moral compass. He went on to say, you give someone that has those beliefs all the power and trappings of the presidency, and it becomes a very, very dangerous time. I think people are very frightened that this man could actually become president of the United States. Take a little side trip. Look at Sarah Palin. Did you see her this past week endorsing Donald Trump? Do you wonder why she's doing that? I mean, she doesn't have to do that. And her being a Christian and all, why would she pick the man with the foul mouth, the serial adulterer, the man who builds casinos, sells beer, wine, liquor, and alcohol of all sorts, and the gambling and all that? Why would a Christian do a thing like that? Did you hear her potty mouth? Talking about beating up on ISIS. Not the first time we've heard her say things like this. And trust me, it will not be the last. In her home state of Alaska, a few years back, it was public record that she had to be restrained at a party, an outdoor party, where her daughter apparently got into a scrap with another girl. The whole thing escalated beyond the picnickers, and well, Sarah jumped in, mouth and all, and the police had to break it up. This is the former Alaska state governor, former vice presidential candidate, anointed one. You know the story of Reverend Thomas Murthy, the apostle, and the 7 mountain mandate, right? No? We've talked about it. Let me explain it to you quickly. Sarah was a member of a third wave charismatic church in Wasilla, Alaska. This apostle, Thomas Murthy, came along. Apparently he had been in and out of there as an evangelist or a preacher in that church over the years. And he learns that she's running for governor. This is in 2005. And so he promptly anoints her to, quote, conquer the mountain of government, end of quote, there in Alaska. There's a video of it. You can go online, type these names in, you'll see it. Murthy also implored God to protect Sarah from the spirit of witchcraft. I can think of a lot of things to pray to protect somebody from, but that one didn't come to mind very quickly. I would have prayed that she would be protected from her own spirit, from the flesh, the things that human beings can get caught up in. But no, this is the spirit of witchcraft. What is his authority for all of this? Well, he's an apostle. What do you mean, an apostle? He's an apostle with the new Apostolic Reformation. These people are out to take over the world for Jesus. Apparently, Jesus can't come to a world that's not under his authority. They have this thing called the 7 Mountains Mandate. The idea that Christians are to dominate a number of these influences, 7 in number. One is business and finance, that's 1. Education, media, government, arts and education, church, family. The mandate is part of the new Apostolic Reformation, which is not an organization as much as a network of apostles and prophets who believe the second apostolic age is already here. This means the age of denominations has passed. Now do you understand why your church is not called a church? Now do you understand why so many Southern Baptist churches are going into this contemporary thing, taking the word church off, not even telling you they're Southern Baptist? The age of denominations has passed, and these anointed apostles and prophets must govern within his or her area of influence. These people are dominionists. They believe Christ cannot, will not come until the church, Christians, have taken control of the earth. The founder of all of this is a fellow by the name of C. Peter Wagner. He and James Gold, Mike Bickle, Bill Johnson, Mark Sharona, Brian Simmons, Cindy Jacobs, and a number of others are the apostles, leaders in this group. There are a lot of other people out there with famous names who are change agents for making dominionism happen. Rick Warren is one of them. He has been very busy with his earnings from his books, 40 Days of Everything, in Africa, and he's part of this movement. That's what he's doing over there. He's the apostle for Africa. A Wisconsin event which kicked off in January 2016 and expects to run through May hopes to fulfill its 7-mountain mandate and fund its speaking series with donations. People are encouraged to pay $25 for whichever mountain they want, or they can pay for all 7. The speaker lineup includes, quote, gifted seer of the prophetic, end of quote. Also a Green Bay Packers Today television show hostess and a former lead guitar player for the rock group Skillet. Y'all know about Skillet. Never heard of it. The invitation is from something called the 320 Ministries of Milwaukee, which specializes in prophetic words called revelations. One of these is a sozo, S-O-Z-O, Freedom Ministry. We're going to come back to sozo before the night is out. Also, an apostolic prayer from IHOP's Mike Bickle. No, he doesn't manage an IHOP. He doesn't own an IHOP. This is the International House of Prayer. A crazy, crazy outfit. The invitation to all this reads in part, yes, you can buy a mountain for only $25. What mountain are we talking about? You can buy one or more of the 7 Mountains of Society trainings we are offering for next year. If you would like to buy all 7, the cost is only $150. Beginning January 10th, we will be emphasizing one mountain for 2 weeks. Take a week off, then move on to another mountain. We are bringing speakers in that will bring encouragement, revelation, divine, strategies to influence each mountain of society. Going to teach you how to take control of the world. Does that sound Christian? It's not. It's pure mysticism, coupled with personal exaltation. But you probably know somebody, or you will, who's into this. This is a product of C. Peter Wagner, formerly professor of church growth at Fuller Theological Seminary, School of World Missions. There was a think tank specialist who created methodologies and strategies of reintroduction, the reintroduction of gifts, I say fake gifts, and mission to the churches. Biblical Discernment Ministries in February of 2004 talked about all of this. An associate of John Wimber, who founded the Vineyard movement, that of barking dogs and drunk bartenders and laughing revival fame, along with Rick Warren with his 40 days of purpose and prayers and anything else you can think of, gives you some idea how wacky this thing really is. Chuck Wimber was associate pastor to Chuck Smith, Calvary Chapel fame, out in Southern California. Back in the 60s, a young fellow by the name of Lonnie Frisbee came along, and Lonnie Frisbee apparently, assumingly, got saved, and he had friends in the drug culture, and he was a very charismatic kind of guy. Later on, it was clear that he was certifiably demon-possessed, but he ministered in that church, in that Calvary Chapel, and grew the young people's group so long. It actually made that church. It turned that church into a early days mega church kind of a thing, spawned the whole Calvary Chapel organization. And it was done with young hippies, with his music and his preaching and teaching and some eerily personal interaction. There are videos online you can watch of this thing. I mean, this guy knew things about people he could not possibly have known. And at some point, it became obvious that there was something wrong. Frisbee had been into the sex and drugs thing. LSD was hot in those days. Living on the beach and Haight-Ashbury and all that kind of thing. He brought that music and he brought that intense personality into this church. It attracted a number of hippies and others by the music and by the fact that he had this personality and knew these things and could impact people's lives in this way. But Lonnie Frisbee eventually went back to his drugs, and he went back to his sex, which was homosexuality, and died at a young age. A miserable death. Chuck Smith spoke at his funeral doing everything but apologizing for Lonnie and for his not seeing what was going on. Lonnie's ex-wife, who was there, was not happy with Brother Chuck. Wimber was in there at that time. He left California. He started Calvary Chapel in Toronto. His brand of charismatism did not suit Chuck, and so he took the name of the church. He couldn't call it a Calvary Chapel, and he took the name Vineyard instead. Wimber mainstreamed the healing ministry you see today as normal, a normal spiritual event under the banner Signs and Wonders. This was 1982. The movement has morphed and is known today as Dominionism, Third Wave, Latter Rain, Kingdom Now, Joel's Army, Manifest Sons of God, Charismatic Renewal, Charismania, and a host of lesser-known defining terms. Wagner, who claims that the church of the 21st century will be ruled by apostles and prophets, has anointed himself as the presiding apostle. Linked into this movement is the Kansas City prophets, Mike Bickle, who brought grandiose claims that a, quote, new breed of super prophets were beginning to arrive on planet Earth who would change the world forever. These people are not governed by any official denomination, but are led by alleged apostles and prophets. They teach that the new apostles and prophets are to be the government for this new emerging church order. Wagner claims there will be a Reformation greater in scale than the Protestant Reformation. The organization claims direct revelation from God. Many allege that Jesus and angels visit them in person. Some of them declare that they have been visited by these creatures. They have actually visited heaven many times, had conversations with Jesus, as well as the prophets and the apostles. N.A.R's extensive mission outreach throughout the globe has caused the astonishing growth in Christianity in Africa and Asia and Latin America, the so-called 1040 belt through the center of the earth, the equator. Characterized by the denigration of the Bible. The Bible is a wonderful book, but it doesn't interfere with what I want to believe and what I want to experience, and the principle of sola scriptura. They're not going back to the Bible for validation for anything they believe. They believe it. If the Bible doesn't support it, the Bible's got a problem. They are driven by an experience-oriented theology. And this whole thing is based in emotionalism and steeped in mysticism. The leaders, you should hear their names. And you already have. And you will. C. Peter Wagner resigned from Fuller, was recently president of Global Harvest Ministries, which he started, and that is now being headed by Chuck Pierce. Wagner is currently Chancellor Emeritus of the Wagner Leadership Institute, a prominent member of the International Council of Apostles. He's 80-something years old now. He's having to back out a little bit. But all of these apostles and prophets are all involved in this charismatic thing, an extreme view of it. In addition to to Wagner is a guy by the name of Chuck Pierce. He is the head now of Global Harvest Ministries, a charismatic dominion group that Wagner started. Bob Jones, not the one from Greenville, South Carolina. This is an 80-year-old prophet from North Carolina. Paul Cain, who is a troubled and now disgraced latter rain prophet, got all involved with women and you don't want to hear about it. Cindy Jacobs, a discredited prophetess. She has had a number of things that she has been and it didn't happen. Founder of Generals International. Mike Bickle, talked about him at IHOP, International House of Prayer. He talks about before the church can be perfected and establish dominion, it must restore praise and worship as a means to enter into the presence of God. Do you understand praise and worship now? With a focus on young people, Bickle teaches that these youth, as, quote, the manifestations of the sons of God, end of quote, will evolve and emerge into overcomers and, quote, step into immortality in order to establish the kingdom of God on earth. Praise and worship is the doorway. A fellow by the name of Rick Joyner, a New Age prophet, an extreme charismatic, a pseudo-intellectual prophet. Bill Johnson, he's out in Redding, California, Bethel Church. This is where Sojo comes in. We'll talk about later in the evening. But these folks out there at Bethel believe that God's Spirit anoints people with what they call drunken glory, something they call fire tunnel, as well as laughing and jerking, gold dust coming through the ceiling, angel mania type anointings, the sort of thing that made the Toronto Vineyard notorious. Todd Bentley, a disgraced evangelist from Florida, a pseudo-faith healer, an adulterer, a false prophet, covered from head to toe in tattoos with a mouth that goes right along with it, claims that the Holy Spirit told him to kick an elderly woman in the face, which he did, and he wears work boots. He said, as my boot made contact with her nose, she fell under the power of God. I think she just fell. Discredited Todd Bentley was in Florida. He's back. Under the auspices of this new Apostolic Reformation or something similar, he was over in, I think, India or Afghanistan or someplace like that. And I mean, he was raising people from the dead, and he had a tremendous ministry, and he's back. And now Bill Johnson has labeled him as somebody that's worthwhile. Bill's an apostle. He should know. And he praises this guy. Lou Engle, IHOP, he teaches that we have to take back the culture at any cost, and that there are spiritual jurisdictions set up over parts of the country. He teaches that we have to do battle with these jurisdictions and take them back by a method he calls storming them, and then executing reign or dominion over these jurisdictions in the name of Christ. Remember a number of years ago, people were prayer walking? That's where it came from. Now, some of you just went out and walked around your neighborhood and prayed for the people that were in those homes. I've done that on a walk. But other people were actually mapping out city blocks or neighborhood blocks or areas in their community and claiming them for God. And once they went through this process, then the spirits would have to leave, and that area would no longer be dominated by evil spirits. Not a Bible idea. That's witchcraft. This is where it came from. This is the religious background for this Sarah Palin thing. Her political ambitions are justifiable in her mind because she's been anointed by God by one of these apostles. But why the Donald? Well, Trump is running roughshod over every politically sacred cow. Trump is quick to throw anybody under the bus who attacks him. Trump is appealing to the visceral angst in the American breast. And Sarah not only has this vision of domination, but has been used quite shabbily by the leadership of the grand old party. And it's payback time. Where is all this going? We don't have any idea. It's part and parcel of end time scenarios. And we're going to be looking at one later on in the show.